You are the world's worst marriage guidance counselor. What advice do you give? Also, doing sports is hard work. Takes eating right and working out and practicing. So live vicariously through your children's athletic victories instead and make sure to get as many of them as possible, otherwise you're a loser. It doesn't matter whether that's through forcing your children to work insanely hard or berating that underage ref at your 8-year-old's soccer game. A win is a win no matter how you got it. I'm not even kidding when I say this. Indian marriages are based on this. Typical Indian marriages, called arranged marriages, involve bringing in potential partners by looking into their stars and astrology and other stuff, and if compatible and if they like each other they get married. Obviously everything you try to do with your partner can feel oppressive, so when the marriage stagnates, the elders usually say this: have a kid. It fixes everything. It'll bring you guys closer and maybe you'll see that connection then. I pity the kid that is a direct result of an unhappy marriage and not a product of love. All the good things in life are commodities. We trade love just as we buy and sell stock. We engage in human relationships when there is a fair exchange of value, support, motivation, affection. Nothing good is ever free. If every physical good in the Federation came from a single supplier, it would constitute a dangerous monopoly. Personal relationships are the same. It is important for people to get what they need from multiple sources. If a person finds a better source of the goods they require, they are not wronging their original supplier by changing their purchasing arrangements. If one member of a relationship should feel threatened or jealous, they must look at their own business model and ask whether it is performing competitively. There is always room for improvement. Responsible Autonomous Relationships by Jenny Eklund. I mean, to be fair, the babysitter could be an adult, and the couple could have told the marriage counselor that they were both open to the idea and had an open marriage, and maybe the babysitter had already confirmed she'd be down for an SA threesome, and just maybe she'd notified them that she was resigning before making the proposition. Yelling is not only an opportunity to express how distraught you are, but display the emotional commitment you have to a relationship. If you're not yelling, do you even care at all? And if your partner is yelling, you can truly understand just how terribly you've failed them and how much pain you've caused, so that you can do better moving forward. If they didn't care, they wouldn't yell, they would just leave. I know you meant that as a joke, but I also want to point out that sometimes arguing is not a sign of a problem. When you are arguing, you are actually communicating. How you resolve the arguments is also important, but the fact THST couples argue is not a bad thing. Source: couples therapist. Because we were worried that arguing was a sign of trouble, but apparently it's not a bad thing. It's far worse to never argue when there are issues. If you truly have a deep connection, your partner will be able to tell exactly what is bothering you and anticipate your needs without you expressing them. You should work on your nonverbal cues so they can better interpret and react to your state of mind. If they aren't able to do this successfully, you should explain to them every clue they missed and everything they did wrong so they can improve for the next time. I actually really love getting appliances as gifts from friends/family/partners, but that could also be because 1, I'm so used to being forgotten on big occasions. 2, it's one less thing I have to budget for. 3, I try to think of the person being well-intentioned, misguided, sure, but well-intentioned. As Will said, Snowflakes got the spirit. He a little confused, but he got the spirit. Bonus points for any gifts passive-aggressively suggesting your spouse needs to lose weight, workout equipment, gym membership, Spanx clothing, clothes a few sizes too small, gift certificate for plastic surgery, etc. If the clothes won't fit your wife, grab them and exclaim that they just happen to be the perfect size for a gorgeous, younger woman in your life, ex-girlfriend, co-worker, trainer, babysitter, etc. Tell her she's wrong when you know you're right. Point out when she's thinking irrationally. Just leave without her every time she's late getting ready. Tell her to just calm down anytime she gets worked up or upset. Remind her she's supposed to have dinner ready for you as soon as you get home and is supposed to keep the children quiet while you eat and then relax afterward. Tell him it's perfectly okay to compare his wife to supermodels. Tell him you'd like him to stay after the session but his wife can leave. You have something else to talk about. Tell him it's okay to stay out late and ignore his wife and kids. Tell her it's her job to satisfy him whenever and however it. It's very important to win arguments, so make sure to fight with everything you have, and don't be afraid to fight dirty. Call names and hurl insults, show massive disdain for your partner, adversary and refuse to back down, especially if your spouse tries to walk away from the fight. After all, it's personal, and if your spouse says something that hurts you, it means hurting you was their goal, no matter the circumstances. Always remember that you two are on opposite sides, and that you are alone in this. Also, don't get lost in the weeds. Remember that whatever started the argument is what the fight is really about. After you fight, try giving your spouse the silent treatment for hours, or even days, as a cooling-off period. Once you start talking again, the best way to move on is to never ever bring it up again and pretend it never happened. Getting to the root of why something made you or your spouse angry is a can of worms not worth opening, so don't bother. Live by the mantra: if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Surround yourself with this saying on clothes, purse, bumper sticker, social media, etc. You'll be constantly reminded that it's okay to act like a total asshole, because your partner just needs to learn to put up with it for the privilege of being with you. Never try to be a better person. You can always blame the other person and find another victim partner. My parents were on the brink of divorce. My dad had a midlife crisis where he thought he needed to buy a motorcycle, be a bachelor and travel, and they went to see a couples therapist. About 20 minutes into the session, the lady starts saying there is no way your relationship survives, you need to give up on this. That stupid lady just about broke my mom's heart all over again. A month later, my mom gets the courage to say one last try. I booked a 1-week couples therapy retreat. It saved their marriage. It's nearly a decade later and their love and marriage is stronger than it has ever been. Anyways, that spiteful and hateful little woman on a therapist who just went on and on about how my mother wasn't woman enough for my dad, whatever she said is the answer to this Ask Reddit. You must stay married for the kids' sake, no matter how bad things get. Even if it means you need to secretly sleep around to be happy, don't ever divorce, at least until the kids are 18, or better, until they are out of college, or maybe after their first post-college job starts. It doesn't matter if the kids see you fight and dislike each other all the time. It would be way worse for them if you divorced. Plus, kids bounce back. They will know you still love each other even if you don't ever show it. You don't want to model that marriages are just something you can give up on, right? Kids must have a two-parent only, single household with the mom and a dad, or else they grow up to have mental issues and poor morality from having a bad example set for them. Kids from divorced homes all turn out to be degenerates. This is actually really good advice. Don't go to bed angry is the dumbest thing ever. If you're fighting with your spouse, you should eat and sleep. 9 times out of 10 you'll wake up and realize what you were fighting about was stupid. Conversely, if you just stay up and keep fighting, you'll both get more tired and more irritable, and dig your heels in even more. My grandfather received advice from that exact marriage counselor. This was in the late 50s or thereabouts. They had been married something like 20 years, had their 2 kids already. My grandmother was always hot-tempered, even to the point of being violent. Her outbursts were aimed at my grandfather and mother. My uncle was largely left alone, the running joke being because my mother was the favorite, and he didn't warrant the same level of attention. Over time, this had gotten worse, maybe menopause-related, but back then, medical science was at the dame's amateur stage. Despairing of other options, my grandfather, then a devout Catholic, went to a church-run camp of some sorts for men with troubled marriages. It was run by priests, who, of course, are the ideal fonts of marital advice/s. My grandfather described his delicate situation to a particularly old priest. He said, "The Bible states the man has dominion over the household as God has dominion over the earth. This is the proper order of things. If your wife will not obey you, you must take whatever means necessary to restore that order." I have found that for some women, there is no resort but to put her over your knee and spank her. Now, my grandfather had many noble characteristics, but made multiple missteps understanding the minds of women. This was a subset of a general lack of empathy. He was not mean-spirited. He simply couldn't grasp that other people had different mindsets and principles than him. As such, something like the golden rule could be problematic, because he might do something like buy a vacuum cleaner for his wife for Christmas. That was not a hypothetical example where he would love a high-end and complex but practical device. He couldn't understand his wife wanted a more personal gift, rather than a household tool. I mentioned the above because even with his blurry grasp of interpersonal relationships, he immediately recognized this morsel of wisdom as idiotically ridiculous. As such, he mentally checked out for the remainder of the retreat. When he got home, he could barely wait to tell my grandmother of this absurd exchange, which he did, laughing throughout. Once finished, he burbled, "Can you imagine such a thing?" and roared with laughter. My grandmother, however, listened quietly and without reaction. He waited for her response, and she eventually said, "He's right. You could spank me." Reeling, utterly flummoxed, he incredulously replied with something clever like what? She reiterated, "You could spank me. You're a man, you're bigger than me, you're stronger than me, you have an athletic background that I do not. If you wanted to put me over your knee and spank me, I couldn't stop you." She left him to process the veracity of that logic for a couple seconds, then continued, "But then you could never, ever, go to sleep." Women love it when you take initiative in a relationship. Who cares if you've never said two words to the object of your affection? Show her you care by doing research. Follow her wherever she goes, learn her schedule, learn who her friends are, dig through her garbage, but most importantly let your imagination run wild. If the cops find you, make sure you show your evidence that you're in a relationship. You'll need that for court. Men, anytime you're having an argument, just remind her that she's being emotional and needs to calm down. Check to see if it's that time of the month. She will appreciate your logical and rational behavior as well as your care for her health. Women, when you're having an issue, just say that you're fine. He'll figure it out on his own and be a better partner for it. It's like giving a man a fish versus teaching a man to fish. Once you married, you became her property. Your only goal in this marriage is to make sure they are always happy by meeting every one of their demands. The harder they hit you and the more bruises they leave only goes to show exactly how much they love you. Some common phrases to use are: "I fell down the stairs," "I walked into the door," "I'm so clumsy," and "I tripped over something in the middle of the night." Completely let yourself go both mentally and physically. Stop doing anything that contributed to self-improvement. Stop brushing your teeth regularly and wear the equivalent of a burlap sack when going outside. If your partner suggests taking care of yourself because it went past "I'm no longer attracted to you" to diabetes might take your foot this year territory, flip out. Insist that you have no obligation to them, and if they don't like it, they know where the door is. If your wife is unwilling to perform her wife duties, set up a nice dinner table, order a chef. After dinner, welcome the very beautiful escort that you've ordered. At this point your wife might get a little angry. Ignore her. Proceed with the escort and do your absolute best. Ignore your wife or let her watch, but do not let her join. This is for you, wife, to learn about what makes a good woman. When you're done, let the escort leave and tell her, calmly, that is what happens when she does her wife duties. Listen, sometimes it is healthier to blow some steam away from home. It is okay to do that whenever you feel that communication between the two of you is failing. Go out, chat with other people and look for someone who is willing to copulate with you. That will help you blow some steam off and all leave behind all that negative energy. If this option doesn't make you feel quite comfortable with yourself, You may consider paying the other person so it doesn't feel like you are cheating on your spouse but more like a mere transaction, similar to going to the supermarket and pay for a loaf of bread, right? So go out, try to mingle and blow some steam and come back home feeling renewed and refreshed. Your partner will appreciate the effort you put on this because you're not taking it in him, her but actually on a stranger who may or may not be paid to deal with the angry version of you. Fighting is an important part of any disagreement. Make sure you use weapons, if possible. A few bruises and some blood will make everyone feel better. Communication causes problems, but only when it is done peacefully. Screaming is encouraged, especially when it involves secrets and private grudges. Kids are the best part of any relationship, and will solve all your problems. You should have as many as possible, and make sure to use them as pawns in your fighting, so they feel included. Talk about your problems, and your partner's flaws with your friends. They're your best source of good advice. You can't lose an argument if you remember enough past mistakes and offenses to name one after every statement your couple makes. This also shows who is the good one in the relationship, as the one that runs out first is the one who has suffered less, so he or she deserves to lose the argument and also feel guilty and sad for their infinite pile of misbehaviors. Tell the husband to always affect a sarcastic tone, complete with the self-satisfying grin, in response to any concerns or grievances that the wife brings up, and tell him to always turn everything into a debate, and to focus on calculating the best way to win the debate rather than actually listening to what she is saying. Of course, after he feels he has won the debate, he should take on a highly dismissive tone to show her that her input is no longer needed, and again, complement this with a self-satisfying grin. Half a decade of this and voila, marriage destroyed. Well, if you are having problems communicating, have you thought of having more children or seeking a sister wife who might communicate with you better? Hey, you could even get a little extra income filming that as a side hustle on TLC. Then strangers could give you feedback on your marriage every time you go online. How am I doing? Now what you need is more opinions on the matter. Next time you get upset, I want you to go and talk to 3 different friends. The less they know your partner, the better. And then bring it up. Be sure you present the fresh new ideas as your own thoughts. That way your partner is focused on figuring out what in the hell you are talking about, rather than wasting time trying to ensure it is corrected. The only thing that matters is you. Don't worry about what your partner thinks or feels. If you have an opinion, express it over theirs. Always talk over or fear, so whatever they have to say really doesn't matter. Always be self-absorbed and an attention whore, begging to be the center of attention. Never really solve a problem with your soul, just threaten to go find someone else. Don't really put any effort in at home, just run off with the boys or the girls or your ex. Be sure to be gone more without saying anything. The saw knows you will show up in a couple days. Be controlling and act like you don't trust your soul. Be sure to use the plethora of apps to do so. After the apps, question every move and then take off with friends partying or on a trip. Affairs. They are great for releasing sexual frustration. You won't be angry with each other about lack of action. Make sure you both have a secret bank account, so you can splurge on yourself. What the other doesn't know won't hurt them. Having arguments. Have an impromptu boxing match, clears the air and any bad blood. Drink a lot. Alcohol makes anything better. Still having issues? Have a kid or 2. Those things instantly fix a relationship. Anyway, I'm afraid our time is now up. You can pay me in cash. Me and the tax man have different viewpoints on how my income is distributed. A simple tip for personal growth. When your partner tries to improve themselves in any way, make sure to stress their past failures and express cynicism about their current goals, to keep them grounded. Bonus tip. If they stay committed to what they are doing, be sure to sabotage them regularly through emotional manipulation. Never be direct, but make sure that they know that they are emotionally neglecting, if not abusing you, by pursuing anything outside your needs. Just because he hits you when he is drunk doesn't mean he is all that bad. And you yell at him, so you both do equally bad things. Relationships are all about balance, good or bad, and in this case we have the bad balance, but it's balanced so you have a healthy relationship, and I do think getting kids will make the bad balance turn into good balance.